Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi, this speaking show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Vampire Diaries, Grimm, Sleepy Hollow, and Emerald City. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you don't want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the times when I talk about each of the respective shows that I'm watching. For example, if you want to hear what I have to say about The Vampire Diaries, you can skip to what I had to say about Grimm, or Sleepy Hollow, or Emerald City. The first thing I'm going to talk about is The Vampire Diaries. A very good episode and on so many different levels. I kind of just want to... I'm trying to find a good place to start. Okay, basically, we're picking up with what Sybil did to Damon. She messed him up bad in the sense of, like, basically she trapped him in his own mind, like, because she flooded all his, like, you know, turned his emotions back on, flipped the switch, his humanity's back, and basically it all kind of hit him so hard that basically he kind of shuts himself down because it's like he's so disgusted with himself over everything that he's done, and it's just basically he feels like he deserves to be in hell for everything he's done and deserves to burn. That's why every time they touched him, it just shows Damon like burning on fire. And so Bonnie and Caroline work together with Sybil to get inside of his head and different things. We see 3 different people pop up in the episode, people who are dead. We have Vicky, Sheriff Forbes, as well as Tyler. Vicky, because this kind of coincides with the episode of the fact is that, Matt doesn't there's a lot of stuff that Damon's always done. Like, it's always kind of failed to the wayside because they were, no matter what's happened, like, him and Stefan were always still kind of his friends, but, last season that all, changed, and so, they were kind of at odds. So, and he's kind of continued subsequently since then. And so, he's screw Damon, I'm not going to help him, because basically the deal is give Sybil the bell and everything, and she'll, help with the whole situation. But then Matt talks to his dad about it, and his dad's like, screw it, let Damon burn for the person who did this to her. Because for him, he was never there for Matt or Vicky, but it still hurt him knowing that she was gone. And it's like, none of this would have happened if I was there. Maybe me being there in your lives, I could have prevented this happening. Maybe we could have, probably, he didn't outright say this, but I guess a situation could be they could have moved away from Mystic Falls. But considering how influential their family was in the whole, Maxwell's being part of the whole situation with Mystic Falls, kind of being the true founders of it, I doubt they would have ever moved, but it'd been a situation that he could have at least protected her or something. So he's kind of let Damon burn. So basically, it comes down to it, I like what it was, and it was kind of the fact is no one knows Damon, and I kind of figured that's what it was. I was like, essentially, Damon created a world where he died back in the day. Everyone that ever was affected by him, a lot of the main influential people that were affected by him being a vampire, he basically, in this world, he created a world where it's they had lived out their lives unaffected by him. For example, Vicky didn't die, Henry didn't get killed. It's been such a long time. It's really good to see Bonnie's grandma. I love Jasmine Guy. I got giddy when I saw her name. I was like, ah! But I don't actually remember the circumstances of how she died. I'm assuming it's related to Damon. Like I said, I'm going once this is all done, I am going to go back and binge on this, because it is I think Netflix has everything up to season 7, so I'm definitely going to have to binge, because a lot of earlier stuff I don't remember. I remembered her grandma is dead. I definitely remembered that, but I just couldn't remember the circumstances. So I assume it's Damon related, because of that whole circumstances. But it's Damon basically created a world where everyone's lives were better. The fact is that Sheriff Forbes is still alive in a sense, and it was kind of interesting hearing Caroline speak of Damon in a very positive way. That kind of threw me back, because she's always never been the biggest fan of Damon. They've all kind of been in that situation, even Bonnie. But, after that time in, back in the past that they spent together, when the other side collapsed and they ended up in that Gemini prison, where they basically were stuck with, where Kai was also hidden. Because of that, him and Bonnie got to get, became good friends. Besties even, and it's if other than that, if prior to that she hated his guts. Same thing for Caroline, because Caroline was she always wanted Elena and Stefan, and just being who Damon was, the fact that he called a lot of things to kind of play out the way they are. So it's kind of in a sense, Damon kind of ruined everyone's life. That's kind of the grand scheme of the show. It's Damon ruined everyone's lives, and essentially, for Caroline, she admits the fact is, he was her best friend. He was Sheriff Forbes' best friend. Like, and it's so weird when you actually look at it. It's like, yeah, the way they bonded and everything. Like, obviously they became friends on the false pretenses, but when the truth came out and everything, they stayed together, friends, they bonded, they talked a lot. And then she admitted, she was like, the reason she didn't like Damon a lot, but it's like, he changed in her eyes the moment she realized, like, oh man, like, he's the only person that really knew what it was like to lose, Sheriff Forbes. Like, that was her mom, but for her, like him, that was like one of his best friends that he lost. And it was just like, she saw how much it hit. Like, it hit everyone, but she sees how, like, Damon really knew what she was going through. And that's how she could forgive him for a lot of the terrible things he did, because it was like, when her mom was in that state, like slowly slipping away, Damon was there for her, being there with her, joking with her, staying by her side through it all. And, Caroline was in her situation and she wasn't there when the time came. Damon was, though. And it's like, that's kind of one thing. So, I didn't know how that whole situation was going to go about, because it's like you have Sheriff Forbes torturing her own daughter, because it's like, oh, you're the vampire. I'm looking at Bond. And it's like, oh, dude, that sucks, dude. It hurts on so many levels, because it's like you're being tortured by your mom, and also you're being tortured by your dead mom. It's like you wanted this moment of just like being with her and talking to her and working together with her, which I thought was going to be the case. But then she found out, Caroline was a vampire. But that's kind of the whole point, just because it's like, and then you have Bonnie, and talking to her grandma and everything, kind of being like, you know what? She's like, oh, don't get mixed up with vampires. She's like, it's too late. Most of my friends are vampires. I'm even in love with one. She is like, are you trying to kill me? And she's just like, I've never really been happy. And her grandma's like, that's always what I've wanted. Your happiness meant the most to me. And it's just like, and it was that beautiful, like, in the grand scheme of things, I thought it was just like the whole Tyler situation kind of sucks too. Like, because I know it's not true, but there's still that part of my back of my brain. I'm like, I hope that Tyler's still alive somehow. It's like, no, Pete, he's definitely dead. And it's just kind of like, it sucks, dude. Because basically, in the grand scheme of things, like, I feel like we've never seen this Damon before. It's weird seeing Damon the way he was at the end of this episode, like, so apologetic, because Damon's always been half-heartedly apologizing for certain things and stuff like that, and it's kind of interesting, like, to finally, like, see that different side of him. I feel like we've seen this side, but never, like, we've seen this side to a certain degree, but not this. Like, it's like a vulnerable Damon being, like, apologizing for everything that's ever happened, and, like, when the whole situation while apologizing to Matt, he's like, yo, Matt, I'm sorry about your sister. I never, ever told you that, and I'm really sorry, And he's like, and even Matt's like, the biggest problem he had with Damon, and it's just kind of like, he was like, go ahead and let Damon suffer. He's like, you know what? Just, okay, we're good to a certain extent. Obviously, you still got a lot to make up for, but he's like, eventually, I'll keep my mind open, and basically maybe one day I can forgive you. And it's like, he's like, I hear this town needs a sheriff, and then Damon's like, I've always had, always been on good terms with the sheriffs. And it's just like, because to me, because it's cool but sad, because it's like, yo, they're really setting up that, like, yo, this is the end all be all. Everyone's stories are coming to an end. These like closing doors, and like, well, closing and / kind of opening doors, because it's like possibly Matt and Damon being on like the same side, like, because like I said, they've been at odds for so long. Like, he's never had, him and Stefan being at odds is kind of a more recent thing. Like, he always had a problem with vampires, but then he still accepted them as his friends. And then you take this case of like Damon. It's like Damon's always been the antagonist amongst the group, even with the whole Elena, especially during the whole Elena situation of being like him and Elena being together, her becoming a vampire and everything. People think like, oh, she's changed and it's all Damon's fault type of thing. But what really got me, I was like, it kind of made me go, is that letter he wrote to Bonnie. He never actually, because Bonnie was like, oh, Damon wants me to know what's in this letter. He's going to have to tell me himself. And he reads it to her. Well, I mean, obviously from his memory. But basically, the reason why he left is because he knew that Bonnie would try to do everything she could to make him into the best version of himself. He literally says, like, it's the same thing Elena did. Elena made him the best version of himself, and he knew Bonnie would strive for the rest of her life to do the same thing. And that's what scared him, because it's like, I can disappoint you once and you can hate me for that. That's fine. But I don't want to disappoint you for the rest of your life, because you're my best friend and I couldn't do that to you. I should have said this to your face, but I just couldn't. I was too scared and I'm too afraid. Because it's like, I want you to be mad at me this one time, that's fine. And it's just kind of like, it was such a beautiful thing. And it's like I said, you see that somber Damon and it kind of catches you off guard. I'm like, dude, you get Bonnie kind of tearing up and everything. It's like, It's a situation like, because it's a situation like when it comes to Bonnie and Enzo's wedding, like when they eventually get married or whatever, it's going to be like a situation like, so whose best man is Damon going to be? Obviously, Caroline's going to be a maid of honor, but it's like, is it, it could be like a tie. It's like he's there to be for both. Like he'll probably be there to give Bonnie away at the wedding, but he'll also be the best man for Enzo. Like something like, I just think that'd be so cool. But it's just so interesting seeing that side of Damon. I also love the twist of like, obviously Celine's already like always like, because it's obviously her being her, she obviously has her own plans. And I'm like, okay, what is she up to? Like I said, this entire time I thought the whole point was to kill Kate. It's like, no, her entire point was to kill her sister. It was literally all to kill Sybil. I'm like, really? It's like, why not? I thought you were aiming higher. I thought, like, okay, I knew you had a problem with your sister, but I was like, I thought that was gonna, like, okay, you put that off to the side and just wipe out Kate, but apparently that's not the plan. And very interesting when they break it down, because it was like, okay, she's like, I can give you, talking to Stefan and everything, being like, okay, I'll give you something interesting. He's like, what is it? She's like, okay, so what I'm gonna do is, tell you how this whole bail system works. And it's like, you need more souls for Kate, right? She's like, well, let's do it like this. You basically get, Matt to ring the bell 12 times, and it basically activates the bell after it's rung 12 times by Maxwell. She's like, I'm not 100% sure why it works like that. Like, why you have to be the one to do it. I guess it's because you're the ones who crafted it. Some kind of family thing. But essentially, they have to ring it 12 times. And basically, she left this out because it's like, oh, it'll just kill any siren nearby. But it's like, it does more than that. When the bell rings 12 times, basically, the world that Cade built for himself. The way she described it is like, what's the phrasing she used? Like an imprint of how he died. That basically he manifested an entire world kind of based around the way he died, that he burned at the stake. So it's kind of a world of fire, specifically hellfire. And basically that's what kills someone when the bell rings. But the hellfire is ranged. So once it's rung 12 times, it doesn't just kill every siren nearby. It expands hellfire in a radius, and that radius included all of Mystic Falls. So it kind of represents like, oh, so Stefan was kind of okay with it. It's like, okay, it makes up for the amount of souls. And that's not sad. The reason why Stefan's like, okay, I'm here. She's like, so why are you here, Stefan? He's like, I'm here to reconsider us getting married. It's like, I want you to reconsider marrying me. He's like, nah, I'm just messing with you. I'm here to get my bro. It's like this whole Cade situation. I'm not getting enough soul. So it's like, I came here to get Damon and kind of snap him back into business and be like, yo, let's get to this killing thing. I thought it was just kind of, it's kind of sad moment of just being like, oh man, you only came to save your brother for the sake of like doing your job. It's not even like you really care. Like, I mean, on some level, he was kind of there for that reason, because basically what Damon ends up finding out, the reason why everything's there, it's like Damon is like obviously got to deal with his own problems and all the stuff that he's done, but at the same time he's like, don't worry bro, I forgive you. And Stefan's like, all the stuff you've done, you're like, you'll forgive me? He's like, you're the one that turned me, that basically I forgive you for creating this monster. It's because Stefan didn't let him die that, that he ended up becoming the monster that he is. That Stefan's in a sense, like Stefan, because the fact is, it's also because I didn't even go that far. To me, I just thought like, oh yeah, because Stefan was always there for him. Like Stefan was always there to try and be there for his brother no matter what he's done, always forgive him, be there to kind of push him forward, keep him going. And it's like, I thought that was specifically what he was talking about. Like, I forgive you for that, but it's like, no, for making me into this monster. It's like, but you almost see, even with his humanity turned off, you can still see it bothers Stefan a little bit because he beats the crap out of Damon. He's like, dude, I hate you so much. It's like, how dare you talk about I'm the one to blame for this whole situation. I'm to blame for all the crap you've ever done and pulled. Like, you make me sick, almost like, that kind of look on his face. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Because like I said, in that world he created in his mind, he wasn't a vampire. And so when Stefan was beating the crap, he's like, why aren't you healing? It's like, yeah, the vampire inside of me is you. Like, the monster inside of Damon is the monster. It's always been represented by Stefan because Stefan's the monster. Because I guess on some level, it's the thing is that Damon has always blamed Stefan too. It's like, how you're the one that kind of made me this way. Because it's also, it's something weird. Like, once again, it's one of those situations, like, I don't remember because it's been so long. Once again, another thing, I have to go back and really rewatch this. I should have done that before the final season started, but I didn't think about it because there was so much other stuff I was trying to catch up on and things. But I was, for some reason in my head, like, I could have sworn it was the other way around. I thought it was Damon who made Stefan a vampire. I didn't know it was Stefan who made Damon. Like, I remember the situation of one of them dying. I forgot what the circumstances was. I think it was like, I think of the situation, if I could be remembering, but I think it was like a situation where Stefan was dying and Catherine, changed him, and then eventually the whole situation with Damon happened and Stefan saved him. So I think that's how it worked. But it was like something that always been flip flopped in my head. I was like, I could have sworn it was always Damon who turned Stefan, but it's just like I couldn't remember that. So that just kind of messed with my head. But nevertheless, that's a story element I'm surprised never came up again. Like, wasn't that season 5? Maybe? The whole Catherine being dragged off into that door of darkness or whatever the hell that was. And I haven't seen her pop up subsequently since. I mean, with the whole Nina Dobrev situation with the show, which I do hope she comes back. Like, I've seen certain things kind of pop up, wondering, like, is she going to come back? I'm not reading into that because I want to go into it blind. I think it's probably going to be like, hey, it's this final episode. She pops up one last time. I get the feeling that's got to be how it plays out. But, it's not like the character would pop up. It's not like they could tell that story since she's no longer part of the show. But then it's like still, they had time. But there was literally only one season, now that I think about it, because her in that situation ended up, literally the next season. So it's like, I don't know. They wouldn't have had time to really write that story out. It's like, it does make me wonder, like, before, like, she left the show or whatever, did they ever have any plans of going back to that or not? Probably not. I mean, because really all the other doppelgangers related to her and Stefan are dealt with now. They're the only ones. But nevertheless, I'm kind of rambling on. I do apologize for that. But they do have Stefan captured, and you have Caroline being like, yeah, it's messed up to find out that, you love me, but you still love your brother more. It's like, it kind of makes sense because out of anyone, like, Stefan has been the person that's always forgiven Damon. Like, no matter what Damon's done, he's always found his way back to. It's like, plus, it's like, they've been brothers for over 100 years. It's like, it's kind of hard to kind of break that. No matter how much you care about someone, it's like someone else will always mean more in your heart. It's like, especially a sibling type of situation. But even if she's like, I understand it. If Damon's the one that can bring you back, I'm fine with that. I want to be here with you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So when it is all said and done, I'm going to get you back. There was also a thing that Sybil said that was trying to mess with Caroline's head. She never brought it up at the rest of the episode. Was the fact is that the whole, like, trying to give Enzo the cure, and I guess that affected Caroline, because it's like, it's such a big decision, but like Bonnie never really said anything to her about it, and it was kind of like, it's like, she almost kind of spit in Caroline's face, being like, Sybil did, being like, oh yeah, is she doing it, is it because like Bonnie always gets what she wants, essentially, something like that. I can't remember exactly what she said, but the whole situation with the bell, I was actually that be what she was planning. It was just more so than anything, she just wanted to kill her sister because her sister screwed her over out of the Cade deal. So it's like, kind of I guess that's more so than anything, because it's like, there's no guarantee the bill would necessarily work against Cade, but it's like, to me, that's kind of the best weapon against him. But it's like, neither wanted, it's like they couldn't come together on the point of like, yeah, let's work together, get the belt, and kill Cade, and we kind of null and void all of this. Because the thing is, like, what happens when Cade does die? Like, to all those who are connected to him, like Stefan, Damon, I'll pause there. But it's like, what will happen to them if Cade dies? Does that mean they die too because they lost their immortality? I mean, they did die already. But then when you actually break it down, it's like, well, when it comes to vampirism, it's like, they technically already died and came back. So it's kind of like, I don't know if because when their vampirism was taken away because of the whole traveler situation, is that what it was called? Basically, they put a magic barrier around Mystic Falls. You cross it, basically all the magic from you gets drained away. Hence, like, when vampires cross it, because vampirism, that's always been something, just kind of always a side note, like, I've always loved about this, is that vampirism is, like, not just a supernatural thing, it's not like, it's actual magical thing, obviously, trailing all the way back. I mean, this is before the originals ever really dived into that, but that's just how that is, because it's like something you do forget sometimes, because like vampirism is never really, I mean, I never really think about it too much as like magic, but it's like this show is pretty prominent. It's like, it started off with one family becoming vampires that led to a long line of vampires. I know I'm trailing off heavily, so I guess, I don't know, it's something that was kind of in the back of my mind. I actually legitimately was sitting here. I completely forgot what I was about to say. So that point is mute, whatever I was trying to say, because now I totally forgot the point. Right. What would happen to them? Like, would the fact is that they've died multiple times since becoming part of Cade's situation get reversed, or would it just be like, the immortality drained from your bodies? That's so weird to think about too. It's like they are on original levels right now because it's like no matter how hurt they are, they can always come back. There's nothing that can permanently kill them. But well, that's actually not true because of the whole situation at the end of the episode. Like kind of what I was bringing up earlier. It's like Sybil and Celine could not come to it's like they're like, okay, the fact is Damon and Stefan worked through their issues and kind of working together. It's like we could do the same thing, but they couldn't. Celine is like, I would basically do what I did over again. It's like, because Sybil's like, you basically, it literally a reflection of Damon and Stefan's situation, but they just couldn't mend their bridges. They just couldn't look past their own issues with each other and couldn't work together. And then lo and behold, who shows up? But Cade himself in the quote unquote flesh and blood. I mean, that's not 100% true. But then he's like, yeah, I'm here because basically the bell, obviously it opens up a portal to his world, kind of where the hellfire comes from and everything. But, because it was the 12th strike, it was still open enough for him to kind of cross over. Whether that's a permanent thing or a temporary thing, I get the feeling it's probably, I don't know. We really have to see on that. But then they're like, oh, don't worry, we can work together, we'll do better. He's like, nah, I'm kind of done with that. So now that I'm here, I'll handle it myself. Lights them both on fire. I was like, dude, I was not expecting that. I mean, I guess in some shape or form, it's kind of like retribution for what they did. I'm very curious to find out now that I'm thinking about it. Because I kept thinking Georgie was going to pop back up. It's just like, you got Allison Scagliotti. I can't remember. I learned how to properly pronounce her name one time, and now I'm scared to say it. Allison. That's why, after that episode, I pronounced her name, right, what was it, in the first episode of the season, and I've kind of not really pronounced. But I thought Georgie, just because it was Allison, I was like, oh, obviously she's gonna, oh, never mind. I'm surprised Dorian didn't pop up neither. I'm sure this works out for him because it's like, oh yeah, Celine and Sybil are gone now, so I don't have to worry about them anymore. It's very sad that their story ends up like that. It's just because they spent so much time hating each other, especially in Sybil's case, I mean, Celine just wanted to kind of be away, It's kind of like she kind of started all this, and then she kind of wanted to get away from it, so it's kind of like, I guess, hypocritical and ironic, I guess. I don't know if ironic really would be the right term for that, but nevertheless, I was not expecting him to burn them. I'm like, ugh. And that's why I was kind of going back to oh yeah, it's like, oh, nothing can kill them, and then I thought about that, and I was like, all right, they're, I mean, to what we know, they're dead. So I wonder, because that's supposed to be what can kill a siren is hellfire, and he basically controls the hellfire now, so it's kind of like, I guess they're permanently dead. But the thing is also, what I was trailing back to is once Cade dies, does that mean all the souls he ever captured? Because the way he makes it sounds like he devours the souls, but does that mean someone like Georgie, for example, I don't know, could come back or something? I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. He's dude, it's slowly happening. I don't remember what episode this is. It's 10 or 11 I was looking at. I think this was episode 11. So there's 5 episodes left? Hold up. No, this was episode 10, so there are literally 6 episodes left, dude. That's crazy. It's just I have no idea how this is all going to play out, what this means going forward, especially now that Cade's here. The game has changed drastically. You literally have kind of a god walking amongst them, so it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, just leading towards that series finale. I'm excited yet sad at the same time, so. And now moving on to this week's episode of Grimm. The case that the group catches this episode is basically a guy that's kidnapping. I think I'm going to butcher it, but it's El Cuervo. I know I'm completely butchered it, but essentially he's a Vessin that has 3 eyes and 3 arms, and basically he was kidnapping a baby, but there's a lot of suspicious things about this. Basically, the Grimm book says that basically he eats children. It's basically saying essentially that there is a bad future involved, and it's something that comes up in the episode. I was like, that's what I kind of interpreted as. I mean, it's people who have bad futures, specifically babies that grow up to have bad futures. The reason why he kidnapped the said baby in this episode, Augie, is because basically, his eyes see different things. One eye sees the past, one eye sees the present, and the other one sees the future. And basically, he saw that Augie, when he grows up, because basically his family's like relationship gets strenuous and worse as time goes on, and eventually it goes to the point where Augie grows up in a very secluded, around that kind of dysfunctional family, and basically he ends up killing his family. At first Nick and Hank are like, do you really expect us to kind of go with what you're saying? But then he basically points out that like he did it previously with another kid. I mean, because he's done it multiple, like the reason why they do that is because of they see such terrible things and they have to act upon them to keep tragedies from happening. Like for once, there was a kid named Kenneth that basically, Isidoro, I think is this particular vessen's real name, but basically some years ago, he kidnapped the baby, but he couldn't go through with eating it, so he gave it back. That baby grew up and ended up killing like 10 people. And it's kind of, that's like, he had a newspaper in his room, and I was like, I wonder what that's all about. And that's what it was, a constant reminder of like, hey, I need to do this, because of, so nothing like that happens again. And it really messes with you, because it's a situation of just like, it's like, someone's future, what they're going to grow up and become. And it's like, I mean, like it's not something justifiable, because even they couldn't go along with it, because for one, it's hard to believe, but obviously when things kind of played out and they're like, oh, he's like, the bears, and they're like, when he was dying, it's like, okay, what does that mean? Have a look at the blinky he has that has bears, and that's connected to the vision that we as the audience got to saw when he saw it. So it's a very like bittersweet ending in that regard of that part of the story, of just being like, man, that sucks, because it's like you see his parents arguing back and forth, because what I'm sure, because it already seemed like they had a weird relationship, because the mom Haley was very obsessed with the child, and to the point of like putting the child all over social media, and I'm guessing that kind of put a strenuous part to the relationship, especially when you add in the fact this is like, oh, I saw a monster and the husband doesn't believe her, and that's just like, Nick tries to talk to dude. He's like, oh yeah, you would know about, or whether my wife's seen or not, blah, 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 blah. And then, they would like, basically, it seems like that's going to be a big reason why they have such an issue, because he's thinking his wife's crazy and she knows she's not crazy. So that's going to end up making that vision come true. I mean, it's probably like a one-off story, but it is something, I mean, because it's something we, like, through the course of the story, we will never see the outcome of, just because it's like, that's going to be on his 19th birthday that happens, but still, it's scary to think that that's what that future holds, but it's like, what do you do in a situation like that? Would it have been better to let him do that? But it's like, no, like, because that's the thing, though, like, we don't really know how their powers work. Is it the way they're making it seems like futures are set in stone. In his case, his future was set in stone the moment, he brought him back. So it's like, I think it's kind of a situation like, maybe you have like a 2-day, like he was saying something about a 2-day period. I really wasn't understanding, but maybe it's like a 2-day period before like everything's 100%, like the timeline is 100% set in stone. Like you can't go after them anymore after that, because like once they're returned, it's like, yep, that timeline is set in stone that I don't know, you can't change it or something. I don't know. But the way he was talking, it seemed like it is 100% set in stone. So it's like, this person's going to grow up to be a monster. The best example, you can keep going after it again and again. I use it every time when I'm referring to like time stuff. So Hitler is the best example, because it's like, would you kill Hitler as a child knowing the monster he grew up to become? And like, it would mean saving so many people's lives, but at the same time, it's like, you're still killing a kid. And it's just, like I said, at the end of the day, it also comes down to, is time malleable? It's like, I mean, because who knows, doing what they're doing might end up being what's influencing them. Like in his case, if he had never entered their lives yet, they might have had some marital issues, but would their issues have been to the extent that they are now? It seems like they've gotten worse because he entered their life, Isidoro, and it kind of messed up their like marriage even more. But I mean, at the same time, it's kind of like, well, it seems like it was already kind of a little rocky because of the way she was very obsessed with social media and stuff like that. But it's like a moral dilemma, and it's not the first time like Grimm has done it. They've done that in other cases. I do remember, but it's like, I can't quite give a concrete answer, so I do apologize for that. I was halfway expecting like things ended like, oh, that was it. I was thinking something was going to happen, like somehow Nick was going to get involved. It's like, oh, either he's going to bring up Kelly or, well, it seems like it's a baby thing, but I guess it's also like how newly born they are. And Kelly's been around for a while, so it's like he's no longer eligible. I brought it up last episode. It's like, what do you think is going to happen with Kelly and Diana? It's something even more when you sit, like now I'm sitting here thinking about it even more. It's like Kelly is half a Grimm, and he's gonna have like he has a half sister that's a Vesson. I mean, at the same time, he's half Vesson himself too, so it's kind of like it makes you wonder: does the Grimm side of him overwrite the Hexenbeast side of him? Just whatever Diana is, and it's like that's going to be a very interesting relationship. You know, obviously growing up, it's like, yo, my brother is part of a long family line of hunting people like me type of situation. You know, it's kind of weird when you break it down like that. Because a big part of this was also I gotta give mad props to the actress who plays Diana. She is like super adorable, and she brings new light. Like that character is always super adorable. I feel like she was already adorable before, like when, like this is like our first season of really being around Diana a lot. We got obviously a tiny bit last season. Well, quite a bit last season, but this season we're getting even more of it. It seems like obviously she's going to be a big part of this season because just being as powerful as she is, she's like super important and everything. But I really love her personality and everything. Just like, you know, she's super inquisitive. First asking Adeline's like, yo, why was Nick dressed like Daddy? Oh, those are Daddy's clothes. Why do you have to look like that? It's like, oh, he was helping Dad. Yeah, we all were. Monroe trying to explain. It's like, yeah, we had to make him look like your daddy, you know, so that he could do what your daddy couldn't do. It's like just going on. Monroe being the awkward person he is, because it's just like I love his interactions with Diana, just because he doesn't know what to say because she's a kid, but also because she's a powerful ass kid, especially when she was doing before, moving everything around the shop and just like makes one thing disappear. And it's just like, I mean, what? You're leaving me down here? So I love that. And also like when she just walks up to Rosalind, it's like, you got a baby in you. It's just like, she says like the creepiest stuff, and it's adorable because she doesn't realize that it's creepy, and just be like, oh, there's not one baby in there. And they're like, wait, what? It's like, what does that mean? It's like, there's more. It's like, wait, what do you mean more? It's like, I was like, oh, twins? And she's like, how many there's more? And she's like, I don't know, there's just more. It's like, ooh, are they having like a little litter of quote unquote pups? And it's like, that's awesome. Kind of cute. I mean, and everyone's like, oh, I guess that means we didn't know that. Congratulations. And then when she was walking away, she kind of gave Monroe a stare. Monroe's like, what the hell was with that stare? And she's like, I don't know. Was it really a stare? It's like, yo, that was a stare. And it was creepy. And I love it. And then asking questions like, so why are you asking Renard, like, why don't you love mommy? It's like, well, it's kind of complicated a little bit. It's like, oh, is it because of Nick? It's like, yeah. Mommy said that you would say something like that and now I shouldn't listen to you. And he's like, well, you shouldn't listen to mommy either. It's like she loves Nick. And he's like, yeah. It's like, well, we all love each other. That's just like, and then when she's cooking food, I love the fact that she uses her powers without restraint. It's like, if she needs to use her power, she's like, I'll use it. He's like, oh, you need to heat the pot up first, honey. And he's like, yeah, I got it. I'm doing it. He's like, wait, what? And he sees her heating it up and pouring in the pasta and everything. He's like, and just start asking him about Bonaparte. So, you know what happened to Bonaparte? Oh yeah, he's dead. Who killed him? You did, Daddy. And it's like, oh, and you know why I did it? He's just like, yeah, because he was hurting mommy. No one should ever hurt a mommy, you know? And it's kind of like, you know, basically using the situation to be like, you know, that you don't have to protect everyone, right? You know, come to me if there's anything, you know, if like Nick ever hurt mommy, he's like, yeah, but don't worry about that. If he ever hurt mommy, he'd be the one that's in trouble. And Renard is like, oh, good girl. And I'm like, in that moment, it clicks in my head, it's like, are you going to do what Nick did? Are you going to try and screw over Nick? Because it seems like he's dead set into trying to follow that path, because it's like, the fact is he brought that up makes me think, like I think I brought it up last time, that this could go so many different ways, because it was set up last episode. It's like, yeah, if anything ever happens to me, Diana won't be happy. So it's like, so if like, it's going to be a situation where it's probably Nick versus Renard, and he ends up killing Renard, and that pisses Diana off super hard. And it's a situation where it's like, Mommy Adeline has to choose between her child and the man that she loves, who's also the father of her other child. So it's drama. Because it seems like that might be a situation where he tries to pretend to be Nick and do something bad, and then Nick gets blamed for it, and Diana goes like super, well, I was going to say something else, but then I was like, you know what? Super Saiyan, because that's inside of my head, like going Super Saiyan on his ass about it. I don't know. That could be what it could be about. I don't know, because Nick isn't the type. Well, I mean, only when he like obviously in self-defense reasons does he ever like fight ladies. So, but it'd never be a situation. I mean, in retrospect, it's kind of like, oh yeah, daddies that hit mommies. It's like, I mean, technically he did in the past, but there was, like I said, different circumstances because he was defending himself. It was like out of self-defense. She was trying to kill him and everything. So I totally forgot about that last episode to mention that, like, she was asking questions about trying to figure out if he was the real Renard, and he was kind of like, she's like, where's the first place we kissed? And he brought up the place where I completely forgot about it because it's such a good moment, because it's like when you first find out about what Grimm's blood could do to a Hexen beast. It's when he originally took her powers away, because basically they kissed and ended up bleeding in her mouth, and she ended up swallowing and ended up losing her Hexen beast powers. So he was referencing that as like the first time she kissed. She's like, that doesn't count, but nevertheless, that was just something I completely forgot about mentioning last time. I was like, because I really enjoyed that just because of that. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more to that. And then there's also like the Rosalie and Monroe situation, where it's like Rosalie's kind of like, okay, we need to get out of Portland. And he's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, she's like, I love Nick. He's like our best friend and everything, but it's like, he brings a lot of trouble. It's like, well, yeah, he is, not, obviously because he's a cop, but also because he's a Grimm on top of that. So it's like doubly trouble. And she's like, for Rosalie, she never thought about this. Having a husband, being married, having children, it never crossed her mind really. And now that it's happened, she's afraid of losing it all. And it's understandable. It's kind of a situation that even Monroe's like, yeah, I've kind of been thinking about too, that Portland might not be the safe place for them. But at the same time, he's kind of like, truth be told, it's kind of, she's like, oh, have you ever heard of the saying like, oh, the shoe, waiting for the other shoe to drop, which was very interesting. I really appreciate that story. Like, Monroe always kind of goes on tangents, but it was kind of, obviously it played along. It wasn't really a tangent at this point in time. It was kind of like, oh, going along with it, but basically explaining why that saying exists. And I was like, oh, that's really fascinating. That I would assume that's the truth. I mean, it could be horse crap, or it could be kind of like a wives tale, like kind of like it's kind of like something that was passed down. It's not 100% true, but it's something people have passed down for so long that in its own way it's become true. So either way, even if it isn't true, which I hope it is true, because that's a very interesting way for that story to come about. I thought that was kind of fascinating. Maybe in my spare time, if I remember, I'll kind of really read into that a little bit more. Like, see if there's some validity behind it or not. Because certain things I do notice about that, it's like when you Google certain things like that, other people Google it too. So it's like, I'm thinking to myself, like, by the time I actually look that up, I'm sure there's going to be other people who've watched Grimm and be like, I got to know if that's real or not. So I'm sure someone else has probably Googled that too. They probably Google it like during commercial breaks or during the TV show. Nevertheless, so that's going to be interesting to see what they decide to do. Will they decide to leave Portland? Will they stay? I mean, because like most of their friends, their group of friends, like, are here in Portland. So it means leaving the life that they created here. But it's like, if it meant for the safety of their children, then, I mean, granted, this is just in Portland. As we know, the world's kind of, you can't escape this whole like vesting situation, because there will always be other Grimms. And it's kind of like, no matter how dangerous, you're kind of, I don't know. It's kind of one of the situations, like, Nick is kind of a superhero, so it's kind of like, I might as well kind of have, it's always nice to have someone, like, strong and by your side during that all, because you move somewhere else, you might have to deal with rogue vests. I don't know. I mean, it's like I said, that's me just thinking about it too deeply. It's like, they just want to be in a place where they don't have to worry about that. And maybe eventually at one point in time, they won't, because it's a situation is there'll always be bad people, not just Vesson and not just humans. It'll always just be bad people in general. And so Nick will always have to do his job as a Grimm as well as a police officer, which, like, once again, bringing up Kelly is like, eventually that mantle's going to get passed to him. I mean, it's kind of passing back and forth between him and Trouble. I'm really curious to see what else it was. I hope we get the Trouble situation soon and find out what the other branches of HW, like, it's what that's all about, like, who's at the top of that all. Because there was a conversation kind of coinciding with that, is the whole Renard situation, where basically the dude was getting pissed at him. It's like, oh, you, like a Black Claw member, somebody high ranking or whatever, he's calling him. It's like, oh, you know how much time we invested in you and everything. It's like, yeah, he's like, basically it was a spell to make Nick look like me. He's like, oh, as a zombie beast, you should have seen that coming. It's like, who the hell sees someone using a spell to make themselves look like someone? Who would have saw that coming? Nobody. So it's kind of like, you really expected him to. He's like, you know what? Because it's like, oh, if it wasn't for you, if Bonaparte was still alive, we wouldn't be kind of concerned about this whole situation. Like, you've kind of set our plans back. He's like, well, basically, screw you. Then there's the whole seeing Meisner thing, which I really appreciate with the Meisner thing. Like, Meisner was always very stoic and like never really showed much personality. But now that he's dead and this is all in Renard's head, I'm very curious to see where that's going, because like that's what's always been pushing in his head, just all the bad stuff. It's like, oh, you once again, like, oh, you chose the wrong side, Renard. And every time he touches like Meisner, he feels him. And then he was in his office. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, no, don't do that, Renard. Don't do that, Sean. That's hot coffee. And he throws it. He's like, whoo. You know what they say about hot coffee? You know, it's coffee. It just passes right through. It's like they really stepped up they made him funny. Like, I don't remember like him being in particularly like that. Like you never really got to see much of his personality, because he's always very serious and stoic. Like, but this time you get to see him have a little bit more fun. So I hope we get to see that a little more in the future. Like, that was something I instantly noticed, and like seeing him like very lighthearted is like, we never got to see that kind of side of his character. Once again, this is all in Renard's head, I would assume, just because no one else can see it too. It'd be kind of interesting, you know, since he's with Diana right now. It's like if it popped up and Diana was like, oh yeah, I see him. Oh, Daddy, who's that? Is that your friend? It's like, wait, what? You can see him? Yeah, I see him clear as day, Daddy. Because, you know, whatever, like, they're just showing it that Diana is, like, super OP. She can see stuff that no one else can see. No one would be able to tell the difference about. So, she can do what she can do. I mean, and all this is also because she's at such a young age. Like, wait till she becomes an adult. She'll be unstoppable. It's why, like, you know, the whole conversation was an episode or two ago, the whole conversation about, gotta protect Diana, because, like, she can be, like, the greatest good that's ever existed, or kind of the greatest evil being, as powerful as she is. And I'm sure that's what a lot of this season is going to be, trying to decide, like, where she stands on that. Because what it will come down to is where Sean's allegiances lie. If he kind of fixes things up with Nick and them, which I love that whole conversation. Like, you know, Nick is walking in, him, Woo, and Hank are kind of getting cheered on about the undercover work. And then Renard brings him into the office. I love Woo's loving it. He's like, man, oh, can you believe how pissed off Renard is? It's like, let me enjoy it. Him and Hank are like, let's just enjoy it a little bit. He brings him in. It's like, yo, you guys screw up. Yeah, it's like, okay, we're fine and dandy. There was a lot of mistakes made, but don't get this twisted. You mess up, your asses are out of here. It's like, no medals. He's like, just get the hell out of my office. I'm like, dude, I love it. It's like, they're so messed up for messing with him like that, but it was so good. So, and then final note of the episode is the whole situation with Eve. That was super awkward. She was there under the tunnel the entire time, and then Adeline and Nick started talking, being like, oh yeah, I missed you and stuff like that. And she's just there. She's about to come up, but then she just kind of stopped. So, I mean, I'm sure she probably came up a little bit further just to hear, but it's hard to say whether she was actually going to climb out or not. She couldn't really leave because it was like super awkward. I was kind of hoping that hoping that at some point in the episode she tried to sneak out, and then Adeline like, whoa, oh, Eve, what are you doing here? And you see that moment of just like, you see her kind of sitting down there and like a little sad. Like I said, love triangle. It's like, oh, Juliet, but Adeline, because I was like, I can't tell you like how super stoked I was. I think I brought that up like a while back when it originally happened, when Adeline and Nick got together. I was like super stoked about that. Yeah, I literally titled the video that Adeline and Nick finally, just because I was like, dude, like, I was like, that would be interesting if they finally got together and everything. And it's like, it's a bang, their relationship and everything. I love it, because it's interesting to see Adeline not be the same person. That was always a concern of hers, because I forgot her powers did come back, but it hasn't really turned up into a situation where she's bad. Like, it seems like she's kind of stayed in control of her Hex and Beast powers, because that was always a concern of hers last season. Like, the moment her powers came back, that she wouldn't be the same person that she's become now. She was also afraid Nick would actually see her differently too, is because that version of her and Nick didn't get along, but it's like this version of her and Nick are in love. So, and then also what that means for Eve. Eve tried touching the stick. It burned her. It messed her up bad. It really hurt her, because it's like only Nick can really hold it. But the moment she started fiddling with the stick, it started making Nick feel weird. He's like, oh man, I got a little lightheaded. I'm standing up. It's like, what the hell does that mean? It's because it seems like to me like that thing probably drains his life force, is what it seems like. So once it's activated, whatever the case may be, it seems like once active, it kind of drains away his life force to do the things that it does. Maybe, I don't know. It's like, because the question is it just because Nick was the first one to really grab it and touch it? Or is it because he is a Grimm that it's acting the way it does? Because this all started back when the Crusaders, and it's like they were all Grimms, weren't they? Because that was the whole thing about it. So it does seem like whatever it is, it's very powerful and destructive. It's like I'm sure that's going to be a big part of it too. Like Diana and this thing, and it's like, dude, if you put both of them together, I get the feeling like Diana's going to be the one that kind of knows most about, like in the sense of like, as powerful and probably will hurt anyone else that touch it, but Diana could probably snap it in half, which I don't know, might be something that happens in the future. Not sure what circumstances will lead to it, but it's like the powerful person versus the powerful thing, and she ends up destroying it or something. I don't know. But she starts drawing all those symbols that she sees from that guy, from the death grip situation. So I'm very interested to see how that all plays out. It's like, what was Eve planning on doing? Like, I guess she was trying to get the stick because she was trying to keep it away from Nick because she knows how it affected him and she wanted to keep it away from him, or she wanted to get it so that she could study it a little bit more, maybe without worrying Nick, or it's because maybe there's a little bit of her that was kind of drawn to it as well, but it's like it damaged her hand. It's like, but I think it's because it's like she saw that it healed her at one moment, but now she sees that it had actually hurt her too. I don't know. I don't know whether it's a situation where it was like, oh, like the wound on her hand was supposed to be remnant of the wound on her body. So it's like it injured her in the same way. Like maybe it took the wound that was there and like relocated on somewhere other part of her. I don't know. Like that probably definitely is me just grasping at straws in that situation. I'm very curious. Is it just like, it seems like the only one that's really, really drawn to it is Nick, but maybe on some level Eve was too, or maybe maybe because it's a situation where she was hoping she could get the stick to reverse what it's done to her, because she doesn't want to become Juliet again, because she doesn't want to feel the way she's feeling. She doesn't want to feel sad, thinking about all the bad things that she's done, or feel sad because of, or jealous or lonely type of situation. So I don't know. Overall, a very good episode, and I cannot wait to see where we go next week. And now moving on to this week's episode of Sleepy Hollow. Things didn't turn out the way I thought they were going to, just from what I saw, a little bit of a preview. I was thinking like, oh, the slime was going to take him somewhere else. I thought maybe it ended up taking him to J Street or some other dimension or something. But it's like, no, basically he got captured by a gigantic spider monster that basically feeds on despair and doubt. Even lives in a place known as the Cave of Despair. And basically it put Crane on trial within his head. And lo and behold, who's the person kind of judging him is none other than Henry. Because obviously it takes a lot of what you, like I said, your fears and your doubts and regrets, and turns them against you. And like Henry is one of his biggest regrets. It's like, it's always interesting because Henry always blamed it. You kind of even get it brought up in this episode. Oh, you weren't there for me. It's like, it's not his fault. Circumstances made it so that he was basically trapped. For one, he didn't even know you existed. He didn't know Katrina was pregnant. He'd already died, and Katrina performed the spell that tied him together. So it's like, granted, like Henry was kind of evenly hateful towards both of them. He didn't like either one of them, but at the same time, it's kind of sad that it just worked out like that. Because basically the whole trial is basically saying, as a witness or whatever, he's kind of a failure as a witness because everyone around him dies. He can't save anyone. Everyone that's close to him, whether you're friend or family or whatever the case may be, you're dead. He used Abraham as an example, the Headless Horseman. Used Abby as an example. Used Joe Corbin. And then he was like, oh, my mother. And it was just kind of like, there were just different circumstances that led to those different things. That basically everything is all Ichabod's fault. And that's more so than anything, it's the monster using its own fears, because he blames himself for everything that's ever happened, especially like Abby dying and everything. It's like he came into their lives. Abraham, he betrayed him. Henry, he wasn't there to be a father to him. Katrina, he wasn't, there to help her when she needed him, like especially in the Henry situation. If the Henry situation that played out the way it did, him and Katrina probably could have found a way to make things work. And Joe Corbin, he couldn't help a friend in need. And it's just kind of like, for Ichabod, it was a sense of like, the fact is, especially when it came to Abby, it's like, Abby was my friend and my partner. It's like, oh God, it gets you every time they bring up Abby. And it's just like, he's like, and you see when he says she's my partner, and you see him choke up a little bit. She was my friend. That basically Abby knew the risk of what this meant going through this battle. And he was like, if I could, I would die 1,000 times over if it meant she could come back for just one more hour. And it's like, God, stop saying that stuff, dude. You're really getting me. Don't say that. But he's like, but Abby sacrificed herself so that everyone could live. And, basically he's not going to let that sacrifice, be in vain. But then there was also like, what the monster was also doing, I like the fact is that even though it was an illusion, he still went after. He's like, the fact is, Henry, I want you to know that even with everything that's happened between us, I still love you. You are my son. I wish I could have been, yes, as a father, I should have been there to protect you. And I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to. But no matter everything that's happened between us, I love you. Because it was a sense of being like, oh, if he had known about Henry, would it have changed anything? Would he still have gone off to war because it was his right and duty? And I believe Ichabod would have. Because even more so, like, well, he says himself, it's like he fights for the people he cares about. So if he had found out that Henry was, his son back then, if he knew back then before he went off to fight, he would have still made that choice because he would have been all fighting for his son to ensure that his son had a future, And he's like, this demon picked the wrong face to try to mess with me. It picked the face of my son that I wanted just even one more chance to see. And it's just, I'm glad, it still got turned against him because it was like, oh, you talk about the fact that you met this new partner. It's like, yeah, Agent Thomas. And it's just kind of like, oh, yeah, a new partner? And what about your old partner, Abby? It's like, she's barely been in the ground 2 months. You've already moved on. And the fact of the matter is that basically he's kind of like, almost kind of alluding to the fact is that he sweeps people up and leaves them basically broken behind him, essentially. That basically he keeps going down this path. He will literally let everyone around him die. And it showed Diana, Molly, Jenny, Alex, and Jake all dead. And it's just because that's his biggest fear, because it's like, especially that conversation because it was also the fact is that, like, he was like, oh, we can protect Molly. But I bet you, but that's always been a probably fear in the back of his head, is the fact is that he says that, but it's like part of him, looks at his own situation. He couldn't even protect his own son and his own wife. He couldn't protect his best friend, the people that mean the most to him. He couldn't protect them. And he's like, how am I, because it's like, if I can't protect Molly, like, how could I ever, even Henry says himself, like, how could you ever try to explain that to her mother? So it's going to be interesting seeing how things goes forth, because Jenny brought up some very interesting things, because it's like a lot of this episode is also Diana trying to get situated, the whole situation, because like Jenny had to bring it up and say, yo, you realize there is no running from this. My sister tried running from it, pretending like what happened when they were kids didn't happen. And, Jenny ended up getting locked up in a psychiatric facility because everyone thought she was crazy because Abby lied about everything. I mean, granted, if she had said anything, I just would have, obviously, in the beginning, it broke their family apart a little bit, especially in their case. They lost touch and everything, but then whenever, that life still caught back up to her, especially when the horseman came and killed Corbin. It's just like she tried to run away from that life, and it took a while, but it still found its way back to her. And it's like the same thing's going to happen with Diana and Molly, because even Jenny uses the example of her mom. It's like, my mom tried to do everything all on her own, which still begs the question, what the hell is Papa Mills up to? What is he doing? Like I said, the last time we saw him was in season 3's finale back in Sleepy Hollow. So I don't know if he's going to pop up at some point. It'd be kind of cool if because it seems like out of anybody, because we still don't 100% know his story, because it seems like there's a lot more to it. Because I still want a situation where we get everyone back. Like, even if it's just like a one-off thing. I want Reynolds, and I want, Sophie. Granted, I don't know, because the actress who plays Sophie, I've seen her in something else, so I don't know. I mean, one of the things I saw her in, it was a one-off thing, and there's another thing that I've seen her in recently. It was The Flash, so I don't know if that's going to be a recurring character or not, but nevertheless, it's like, I want to see her and Reynolds, just like, even if it's just like, oh, we found our way to DC because, the FBI and they had to come here for whatever reason. It's like, oh, Crane, man, you just up and left, and we didn't know what was up. You and Jenny, yo, what's up? It's crazy, working together in one case or something like that. I want that. But getting back to the point I was trying to make is the fact is that Jenny was like, my mom trying to handle all that on her own, and it's like, up against what they're up against, it's not something you can take on alone. And I love the way she phrased it too, basically saying like that basically they're all connected. It's like, because they ended up learning about, obviously Jenny's past with her aunt. I mean, her great grandmother, Grace. And then finding out, it's like, oh, that she was a friend of Ichabod's, and the first person Ichabod meets when he wakes up 200 plus years later is Abby, her great descendant. And it's like, yeah, it's no coincidence. This is all intertwining, kind of fits the mold of the episode, but webs. and then they're all connected. That because basically saying the connection Abby and Crane had was so strong that they could literally pull each other between different worlds. And it's like I've been multiple examples of that happening. Like it's a big bet. I brought it up like last time, like because I was wondering if that's where this episode could end up going, was, you know, the purgatory, like that whole situation of getting Abby out of purgatory. So that's an example, and it says like that bond was so strong, but it's not something that should be feared. It should be something that should be kind of praised, because, you know, with that whole connection of things, not just between the witness, but all of them, even that includes Diana, that includes Molly, and that includes Jake and Alex, is the fact is that they are all a part of each other's lives. That when there's some things that are too tough, it's like you don't have to handle them on your own. In Diana's case, it's like her and Molly were always a rock solid team, and it's like she was a single mother trying to do the best thing that she can to raise a little girl, and it's like that's not an easy thing, but it's like you don't have to do that on your own anymore. We're here to help too, because it's like, God, we're turning into a family, dude. An amazing, weird, you know, all from very different backgrounds, families. A thing in this episode too is like pushing forward like Jake and Alex's stories about how like Jake actually was talking about the fact is before things kind of hit off with like Crane, like them coming to the vault and everything, he's basically saying like he was actually going to transfer somewhere else, because it's like he loved those books, he loved all of it, and he wanted it to be real. But the fact is, if he stayed inside of that box, he just knew, like he knew he had to get out to get more, and he felt like all he would be able to do if he stayed in that vault was the fact is the pages would just be the way they are. Which was kind of part of me being like, oh, it looked like Alex was a little depressed hearing that, because it's like, oh, you weren't going to say anything to me about that? You were just going to up and leave and transfer? It's like, yo, like, we're, like, you know, they're a dynamic duo, so it's kind of like, you can't leave your part behind in the whole situation. I don't know if it's ever going to turn anything, like, into, like, relationship-wise between Alex and Jake. I mean, maybe. At this point in time, I'm not really aiming for it, because to me, it just, like I said, I look at it as like a partner duo type of situation of like, yo, they got each other's back, and they're just, I don't know, like, I don't see it yet, but maybe given enough time, maybe. But it's like, it's not a situation where it's kind of like, it's not, they're not one of those characters I'm like, oh man, they have to get together. It's just kind of like, I'm fine with the relationship being the way it is, platonic and everything. But for him, everything turned upside down the moment Crane came, and it just kind of opened his eyes, and it's like everything I've read, everything I've always kind of wanted to be real is now real, and it's just the most amazing thing ever. I mean, granted, it's not that amazing, because when because apparently on occasion they do break into the Smithsonian, like it's like a little place within the Smithsonian, and they kind of sneak in and stuff, and then they're explaining that to it's like, yeah, we break in there all the time, and then you have Jake being like, it's not like that. Okay, everything we take, we put back. Most of the time, Diana's like, blah, 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 blah. I just don't even tell me. I don't want to hear. I don't want to know. Just do what you gotta do. And then also about Jenny being like, oh man, we need to get some HMX. It's some military grade stuff. We're never gonna be. Oh, I got it. What do you mean you got it? It's like, I got a guy who can give it to me. Okay, that's what I love about Jenny's character too. It's like the criminal element. To me, that's kind of what I was thinking our new witness was going to be. I didn't even think about it at the time. It's like the person I got that was like, oh, maybe we end up finding out that the new witness is like very the opposite of Abby. They're not a cop or anything. They're like actually a rebel, kind of a criminal. And then I was like, it never crossed my mind. I was like, actually, we don't actually need that character, because that's already what Jenny is. Jenny already fills that role. I completely forget about that sometimes. It's like just of her connections and stuff like that. But nevertheless, I also love the fact is when she was breaking into that military base, and it was just basically like, oh no, oh my god, like where's my boyfriend? I thought we were totally supposed to meet here and everything. Like, oh my god, am I like in trouble? Did something happen to him? Just like acting so innocent. And it's just like, she's like, okay. They're like, okay, come this way. She's like, okay. And she's like, no, don't worry, I'll get the bet. And it's like, oh crap. It's like she was so close, and she's so good because she came up on that with that on the fly too. So, but now the team knows that Dreyfus is connected to this whole demon thing, which I'll almost like let that slip my mind was the whole thing at the beginning, because Dreyfus is like, yeah, the doctors and everyone tells me my life expectancy is about 85. And it's like, for him, he's like, wants 85 to be just where he gets started. So it is kind of the whole immortality thing. And he tries to rationalize, like, oh, it's not for my sake, it's for the world's sake. It's because, like, what I could do for the world, and if I can live a long time, I can do so much for the world. The world needs me to live on. And then the demon dude is kind of like, oh yeah, so that has nothing to do with the fact is of what's going to happen to, because the fact is you sold your soul or anything. It's like, oh, don't worry about something like that. So, because I was a little conflicted. I was like, okay, I had a feeling, I had a strong feeling, like, the whole, like, oh, sold his soul to the devil, like, at 25. I was like, that probably really did happen, because that was a little too specific. But then I was like, maybe he was skating around the truth. But it sounds like, no, that's straight up the truth. Not unless, obviously, like I was saying, like, maybe some of the details are different, but that kind of solidifies it, that, yeah, that is what happened. And the fact is, he ended up having his demon dude find some maps of ley lines, basically, like, all the, I guess, magical energy, the supernatural energy that exists below, the city, I would assume. Because similar things like that have popped up in, like, Sleepy Hollow. Like, there's, like, all across the world, there's, like, magical energy lines that kind of tap into the supernatural, magical world. And it's like, obviously, they connect, and I don't know what it is. Dreyfus, obviously, like I said, immortality is what he's aiming for. All these artifacts he's gaining plays a role in that, and he's trying to find, I guess the ley lines are going to kind of lead him to the center place where he needs to place all the artifacts and put them together to get whatever it is that he's trying to get. So now the team knows about that, so they're going to have to be looking forward to seeing how that works. And there was also that goop that was left. Like, Alex is looking at it thinking, like, okay, it's done, there's nothing to worry about. But then at the same time, it's like, the moment they walk away, a face forms in it. And I literally kept rewinding. I was like, is that a face I'm supposed to recognize? I was like, I can't make it out. And it's probably going to pop up later on. And I'm like, dude, how did I not realize it was insert person's name? And just, I don't know. I'm very interested to see how that all plays out. Especially going forward, the whole Molly situation. I like what it was. Her words to basically pull Crane out was like, basically saying that Crane, all these things about Crane. And then more specifically, she said something like, because Crane was like, I heard something. It was Abby's words, but Molly's voice. And it's just because it's like, no matter what she says, there is a little bit of no matter what said, there is a little bit of Abby in there. Someone like his best friend, his partner. And it's just kind of like I said, I'm very interested to see how they do this going forward. Will be a situation where it's like, Molly, you stay home. Diana, mommy, is going to go off and, work with Crane to deal with the situation. She kind of acts as kind of background support. Like, I'm curious to see how that works, because it's like, because we never really know what it's like for the witnesses to work separately, because Abby and Crane are always together, like, on the battlefield. But it's like, she's a kid, so obviously they're going to take precautions when it comes to her, but maybe there's going to be situations where she needs to be on the front line. I don't know. Because obviously it seems like Dreyfus and them are also, because they know that Crane was looking for his witness counterpart, and it's like, well, obviously they are too, because it's like the one people that can stop their plan are the witnesses. But it also seems like they play a part in it too. Like, because I feel like at any point in time he could have Crane killed, because it's like Crane seems like he'd be in the way of your plans. But I guess at the same time it's kind of like, it's okay, because maybe he plays part into your plan. Maybe the witnesses are necessary, so maybe that's why you need both of them. So I don't know. We're just kind of wait to see how that all plays out going forward. This episode was like kind of going back to the Jake and Alex situation. It does seem that Alex is kind of slightly more on board with things. Obviously, she had her reservations before, but I think this will give her an opportunity to be like, yeah, it's actually fun doing the things that we do. Like, ended up building those mechanisms using the HMX, as well as what they got from the Smithsonian, that ended up burning those webs and everything. Which also about that, I love the fact is that we got a little more display of Demon Dude's power. Like, basically, he lifted the guard up and had him hold him up in the air while he's searching around the room and everything. And he's walking back and he's just kind of like, and swipes his hand. The dude turns into like, it's not dust, it's just cloud. I don't know what the right word for it would be. But nevertheless, it was kind of pretty cool. So it's just a very good episode with kind of like a lot of stuff. It's like, Basically, a lot of people having to face everything. Diana facing some stuff, as well as Crane having to face some stuff, specifically his past and everything that's happened, and his fears and stuff. And it's kind of like Diana having to face her fears too. So, very, very excited to see where we go next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Emerald City, where we had Dorothy being captured by that the head honcho of that tribe she met at the beginning of the in the first episode. I was wondering, I was like, why would he be working with them? I was like, are you that afraid of the witches or something? It's like, oh, is it in the name of the wizard? It's like, no, because it's like he thought, Wes promised. It's like, oh yeah, you help, we got her, so now I'll help you free your wife from the prison of the abject. Which at the time I was like, you're stupid for believing her. But I mean, it's like, why would you doubt a witch? It's like, oh, they're witches, they're magic, and they're powerful. Of course they'd be able to do it, especially because East is the one who made the spell in the first place. So it's like, obviously another one would be able to break it. Truth be told, I mean, I was like, no, she can't, because we already know it's like each spell is kind of its own little fingerprint to it. So unless you know the exact kind of combination and motions, the things that are needed for the spell, like the kind of like every spell is almost like a specific lock that needs like a specific key, to unlock. So it's kind of like similar to that. So it's like, I feel bad for him getting duped like that, because basically, Wes was basically like, everyone lies. So because something I was unclear about was when she did that whole thing, because I thought the whole point of that ceremony that her and North were doing was to actually get, like, when she sucked that out of East, I thought that was her taking all the spells. But maybe like, I don't know, it's unclear to me. So maybe maybe West didn't get all the spells, or maybe she did get, but she only got some of the spells that East had, and she didn't get every one of them. That's why they can't open the abject. That's what I'm assuming. But a big part of the episode is her basically kind of torturing Dorothy. Like, it's kind of interesting because you see almost like, most of the time you see Wes, she's kind of like high all the time. And it's just kind of like, it's weird to actually see her actually care. Like Glinda, obviously, for whatever reason, whatever it is between Glinda and East is what, something Wes ended up finding out in the episode. Like, I have no idea what that's about. It ended up being like the fact is that East ended up attacking her during their conversation. Like I said, whatever the context of that was. But the fact is, Glinda lied about it. It was like, oh yeah, I haven't seen our sister in years. And it's like, Wes knew she was straight up lying because she looked into Dorothy's memories and everything. But really quick to get back to what I was just saying, like seeing her actually distraught, because it's like she was basically saying East is one of the few people she cared about that actually cared about her as well. She doesn't really have much of that in her own life. So it's super sad and depressing to hear that. It's like one of the few people that cared about her that she cared about is gone now. It doesn't seem like she really gives a crap about Glinda, because it seems like in a grand scheme of things, it seems like Glinda's kind of like the pushy older sister who's just kind of like thinks she's smarter and better than you. And it seems like Wes is kind of the quote unquote screw up of the family. Subsequently, since everything is happening, because it's like, obviously with the way things are, it seems like the witches were on top of things until the Beast of Forever came and attacked, and then you had the wizard protecting everyone. So it's kind of like, oh, he ended up defeating something that they couldn't. So it's basically like they've kind of fallen behind, because it's like, because they don't want to challenge him, because it seemed like, oh, he beat the Beast of Forever, so it's like obviously he must be super powerful. So why? Like, I don't know. I think it's kind of, obviously the manipulation of the wizard, making himself seem more powerful than he is. Because at the end of the day, he's not some, like, super powered person. It's like he's just a regular dude pretending to be something he's not, Makes you wonder why he's doing that. Is that, I don't know. I'll kind of get to that later on, possibly, if I end up remembering to go back to it. But what I was saying earlier was kind of alluding to, like, to get inside of Dorothy's memory, she pretended to be Karen, her mom. And it was like, I never brought it up the last time she used that power, but I was like, is that something specifically that only Wes can do? Because it does seem like they all have their own natural abilities. Not 100% sure what Glinda's is, but, East had the power to manipulate elements. And then you have, it seems like they can all do regular magic as well, probably like the similar magics, but it's like certain things are only tied to them, and maybe like shape, like making people see her a different way is West's ability. So I'm very curious to know, is that something they all can do, or is that something only she can do? And what is Glinda's? And like, is it just that, or is there more to it than that? Because even with, because when you take, what East did to Lucas and Dorothy, like, because they kind of went back into it when they were showing her going into East memories, but it was like, I mean, going into Dorothy's memories about East, but when she kind of put them in kind of the what looked like it was kind of the prison of the abstract, I guess that was her manipulating the earth element, but it was almost like it was all inside of their head. So it's like not really sure if that's a separate power of control. Like, is that a separate power, or was that part of her controlling the elements power? I wasn't 100% clear on that. Because it's not 100% set in stone what exactly everyone can do. And also, there's a situation with East gauntlets, like when Wes saw that Dorothy had them on and everything. She's like, "Okay, what the hell? How did you get these?" It's like, why did you take, like, it never crossed your mind to be like, "Oh, my sister's gauntlets are going." So is that like something specifically only for her? Like, what's so special about those gauntlets? Like, because it seemed like, because I didn't even think about it at the time. It's like, in retrospect, it's like, wouldn't you have searched her body for something? Because that seems like something very precious. But then again, it might be something that East made for herself. They're not something that, they all are aware of, or it's like some, I don't know, maybe it's some like ancient witch item, or, or maybe it's something specifically that, East stumbled across, or she made herself. I don't know. Really hard to say exactly what they do. It seems like it kind of helped channel her powers when it came to like controlling the elements, or maybe it's kind of a situation where she can always control the elements, but the gauntlets helped her kind of focus a little bit more, gave her a little bit more control. Maybe like her power, her magic was always wild, and maybe the gauntlets helped tame it a little bit. I don't know. Like I say, it's a lot of this, like a lot of stuff when it comes to the show is conjecture, because there's kind of like a lot of, you kind of have to, decide on your own. Like, I'm sure there's probably a lot in the show that would make a lot more sense if I'd read the books, but like I've said before, I haven't read the books, so I don't know, I'm thinking things through until they prove me otherwise to be wrong. The whole situation with Tip not helping Dorothy at first, I'm like, what the hell? Like, oh, you're mad because she helped you, and basically circumstances played out the way they are now. It's like, how is that Dorothy's fault? It's not like she knew your circumstances. It's like, but for Tip, it's that situation. It's like, I'm mad at her for doing that, but at the same time, it's like, I understand. It's like everything's happening. Like, you thought your life was this one way, and then like everything changed because becoming a girl changed everything for her, because she doesn't even know who she is anymore. That basically her whole life's been a lie. Plus, she inadvertently killed her best friend, kind of her only friend. So it's kind of like a situation where it's like, you can slightly understand why she's the way she is. But I was like, that's kind of messed up. It's kind of a certain circumstance. I like put it in a real world comparison. It's like suing someone that saved your life or helped you, which is a thing. I won't say specifically what countries that happens in, just because it's a thing where I heard about, so I'm not 100% sure, but I do hear that that's a thing in certain places. Like, you help someone out and they sue you, and that's why people are like reserved in certain places about helping people. They'll completely ignore someone in distress just because they don't want to get sued. So it's kind of a situation like that. It's like, I went out of my way to help you, and here you are like screwing me over for helping you, trying to do a good deed. I mean, because Lucas was the one who's telling her, like, yeah, we gotta leave here, but like Dorothy was adamant about like, no, we gotta help. And, I mean, it's also because, Dorothy is like a nurse, so it kind of like, that medical side of her is like, yo, I gotta help people, this type of situation. So I actually feel bad for that lady Miranda, because it came down to it, and I was wondering how that whole situation would go, because Miranda's like, look at her soul and everything. It'll show you that Tip actually worked with her. It wasn't me, it was her. And she looked at Tip, and then she's like, I don't like being lied to, and she ends up killing Miranda. So it makes you wonder, like, was Tip able to hide? Like it makes you wonder, like, what happened? Why wasn't, or was like Wes not like, Wes needed to blame someone. She had, because basically Glinda was looking down on her. I mean, mainly because it's like Dorothy was her only means of finding out whatever it was that went down between Glinda and East. I guess it was also kind of a situation, like, just because you had Glinda basically calling her a failure. It's like, oh yeah, you screwed things up, didn't you? Which I did like that, kind of quickly going back to the magic thing real quickly, like how she like used that cloth or whatever, and she threw it up, and it basically formed like, Glinda's face while she's talking to her. I really like that spell. That was kind of cool. I like how that was designed and done. But I don't know if that's like, is it because like when she looks at Tip, it seems like she sees a bit of herself. I think it's kind of why she latched on to Tip and everything. But then also it's like, because like the reason why there was problems with Miranda anyway was because Miranda looked at Tip, and Tip had become the new Miranda. Like she'd become basically West. She Tip became West's best girl essentially, like best servant essentially. Kind of like the Elizabeth and Anna situation with the wizard. So I guess you know, but it's like maybe she didn't want to like kill Tip, even though she could tell Tip had a part to play in it. So she just killed Miranda instead, just because I had to punish someone. Because it's like, even though you might not have been the one behind this, you still screwed up or whatever. You're been in this position for a long time and you screwed up. You let me down. It's like, Tip, this is kind of like a warning to you. Or maybe she just didn't want to look into Tip's soul to see. I don't know. And something else that kind of popped up in this episode that kind of like I thought was very interesting. They finally brought up South. Maybe they had before and I didn't catch it, but this time they definitely were prominent. Like South was their mother, like mother to all three of them. And basically, it seems like South gave birth to like thousands of witches. I mean, granted, they're kind of like the last of the breed, just because most of them were killed by the Beast Forever. But I feel like I have to refer to it as the Beast Forever because there's so many things that have a beast in it. Because the beast has kind of been used on so many different things, like Beauty and the Beast, Teen Wolf. There's an enemy in the Magicians called the Beast. There was something else that had a beast as well. I'm kind of blanking on it right now. But there's so many things, so I'm just going to have to, from now on, refer to it as the Beast Forever, just to kind of clarify that. But it seems like most of them were wiped out. But it's like that's who South was, and she died. So it kind of takes out my theory that, like, that South is actually Karen, who is Dorothy's mom, which, I mean, maybe that's the case. Maybe it's like, I don't know, because you would think, because the fact is that West took on her form, you would think that she would know who she was, because like South, I keep bouncing over, I'm sorry. West kept saying, like, because she was basically poking fun at Dorothy, being like, oh wow, you don't know your mom? It's like, even bitches know the person who made them. Is like, oh, how terrible a person are you to have let that happen, like that your mom wouldn't even want to be around you. It's like, oh, how horrible for you type of situation. So it's kind of like, man, saying that. So you would think in a situation like that, when she took on Karen's form, because the fact that she knew her own mom, South, it would seem that, it's like, oh, obviously she would know when she took on the form of Karen. But then there's different ways you could explain that away. Like maybe West doesn't see what she makes other people see. Maybe, I don't know. That, or the fact is South could have changed her appearance when she went to the other world, or maybe South really is dead. I mean, that's probably the most likely. But I mean, I like the thought of like the other two being a possibility as well. Well, one of the other two being a possibility. I guess since I'm talking about the whole situation, I'll kind of go to it. At the very end, we ended up finding out that whole thing with the wizard, like him and Dorothy are talking. Like Dorothy's like, yo, like, did you know my mom Karen? And he's like, Dorothy, you've come home. Another thing that kind of coincided, I will bring up, is the fact is that because like they ended up getting, like, the fact is that you had the wizard looking at the bullet and he knew exactly what it was. He explained it to Anna. It's like, oh, this is a bullet. It's more powerful than even, magic. Is something that can kill the Beast Forever, especially because the Beast Forever is supposed to be taken on the form of something with a heart. And essentially, basically saying it's flesh and blood, alluding to the fact is that the new form the Beast is taken on is the form of flesh and blood. Apparently in the form of someone that he knows. Which to me, I kept thinking, it's like, oh, they're trying to say that Dorothy's the Beast. Maybe. It seems like that might be what it was kind of alluding to. But the fact is because I brought it up last time, like, it's like, oh, like, is it going to be like the wizard turns out to be her dad? And I'm like, maybe. Because I thought there was a whole situation where it's like, oh, time is a little wonky in both worlds. Like, so time that passes in that world passes differently here in Oz. And maybe that is the case, but... Because basically, he brought it, she's like, oh yeah, you're listening to Pink Floyd. And he's like, how do you know that? So I was like, oh, that's kind of a relatively new thing. So it's not, because I thought it was like, oh, he's like super early from the timeline. Like, for example, he's from like the 30s or something like that. But it's like, no, for him to know Pink Floyd, he can't have been in Oz that long. I mean, maybe he has, but maybe it's been like 20 years Earthwise. But here in Oz, it's been like not that long. Oh, I mean, it's definitely been a while, so... But he is like, Dorothy, you've come home. So I was like, maybe that is possibly pointing out the fact is that he is Dorothy's dad. The reason why he helped Karen get back is because it's like, well, the fact is, if Karen's back, it was there, she was sent back home to protect Dorothy, or maybe it's because he knows that Dorothy's important. Maybe he knows who her dad really is, that type of situation. Maybe he's not her dad, but he knows who he is, and who her mom is. And I feel like obviously for Dorothy to be special the way she is, obviously her parents have to be special in some shape or form too. I mean, granted, they could be regular people, and then Dorothy just happens to be the chosen one. But I think her mom has to be something special too. Like, the thing is, like, the way he says that though, it does seem like he is originally from, maybe it's a situation, obviously he's from Dorothy's world, and then he came here. Let's just refer to it as Earth. He was from Earth, and then he came to Oz. Which begs the question, is Karen originally from Earth, or is she originally from Oz? Did she have a Dorothy situation where she came to Oz, met up with the wizard, and he helped her get back home type of thing? Or what? Did they both get there at the same time? Something we kind of have to wait to see in the future. It kind of coincides with the whole time thing I was talking about. You have the situation where we find out a little bit more about Lucas's past. Obviously, the captain of the Crown's Guard is like, yo, Lucas, there's no way, I mean, obviously calling him by his real name, but, until everyone calls him that, like, I'm going to refer to him as Lucas, especially because Sophie refers to him as Lucas. Which was kind of neat hearing her say, like, oh, Lucas, and then she said Dorothy. Because she was like, oh, she was able to track down where Dorothy was, and he was like, oh, how do you know? And she touched her heart. So maybe that's a magical thing where it's like, because like she's connected to Dorothy in that sense, like she can sense Dorothy's heart because of magic, or maybe she did something that kind of, maybe their connection just because like she, cares for Dorothy and Dorothy cares for her. It's a situation where their hearts are kind of tied, and so like some invisible thread kind of ties them together so they can find each other. But the thing is, like, it ended up being the case. The reason why Lucas was in the situation he was in is basically because one of the guardsmen, because basically they tracked him down and tried to ambush him. He ended up killing most of them and asked the final dude, like, what went wrong? Why are you after me? He's like, basically he was driving a wagon, and then basically one of the guards was like, yo, tell me what you have. And like Lucas refused to. And when they tried to like kind of force their way in, he slaughtered like 10 of them. And that basically messed with Lucas's head, and so he just surrendered himself and gave himself up because the dude, head dude of the Crown's Guard, is like, oh no, there's no way you could do that because I know you're a very honorable man, like, but it's like as we've seen, like Lucas has a vicious side to him because he was like slaughtering those knights and everything. It's like, ugh. I was like, and you're doing that in front of Sophie too, but it's like kind of showing that brutal side of him. But what was kind of running through my mind, kind of like I brought up earlier, the whole time thing, it's like, what if the person, what he was transporting was actually Karen and her, and Dorothy at the time, but because, time works differently, like it hasn't been that long, like it's been a while here, or maybe it kind of coincides, I don't know, it's really hard to say, like, because people age obviously in Oz, but it's like, I don't know, like maybe time does work differently, or maybe I'm just like, I don't know. Like I said, a lot of what I come up with, it's just 100% conjecture. So it'd be kind of interesting that it turned out to be the case, or maybe it has something to do with Sophie, because like the reason why Sophie latches onto Lucas so hard is because of that. Like the first thing she did, she ran up and she hugged the Lucas. So it's like, does she? I mean, what is that? Like. Is she someone that Lucas met before and he just doesn't remember, or what? Still want to know about the whole situation with whatever it is going on with Sophie's ears. We still haven't delved into that at all. And then there was the whole situation with the princess and Jack. It seems basically what they kind of alluded to is that basically her father, the King August, is basically, it seems like his mind is slipping. It seems like his daughter has basically been running the kingdom. Like, obviously he's kind of the face of the kingdom, but she's the one that's been making decisions and stuff like that because he's not the same person that he was. And, because there was that interesting conversation and she's like, and he was like, oh, who are you? And Jack's like, oh, we met before, Your Majesty. And she's like, oh yeah. He's like, well, what is your connection to my daughter? And he was like, well, and she's like, he's my property. And he's like, oh, okay. And at first time I was like, oh, that kind of makes you a dick, because it's like, you're just completely okay with it. But I think it's like, he's not in the right state of mind. So to him, it just kind of didn't really sink in, I think, because it does seem like he is forgetful. Because like, it seems like apparently it kind of makes sense with the whole situation with Jack, that basically their kingdom is very technologically savvy. And so the wizard wants to work with them to kind of deal with this obese situation. And then August was like, okay, if you can bring back my dead dog Randall, he died last year, or was it the year before, or was it last year? And he's like, if you can bring him back, that would be kind of a done deal. And then the wizard kind of talks to the princess about it. The princess is like, yeah, screw you, I'm not helping you. Basically, when the time came originally, when the beast came back then, she was super young, but she was like, I remember the fact is that you let our city get destroyed. Like, obviously, we took time, but we were able to rebuild it. But it's like our kingdom suffered while the Emerald City stayed strong because you protected them. You didn't protect the rest of Oz. You only protected Emerald City. So, when the beast comes, I hope it destroys. I'm going to enjoy watching Emerald City basically get crushed and burned. It's just like kind of retribution for everything that happened, especially because the fact is that her mom died because of it. And I'm assuming that's why she's the way she is. She's very mean. She is very mean the way she treats people, especially with Jack. Like, she's like, come on with me. He's like, okay, what do you want me to do? Like, you want me to, follow you behind you like a dog or some servant? Like, what do you want? She's like, why do you want me here anyway? Why are you taking an interest in me? She's like, but because you're my friend. And they're like, no, I'm not. I'm like, do you even know what a friend is? She's like, no, I've never had one. I've always wanted one. And then it hits me. I'm like, oh, you were mean, but at the same time, it's like it's a situation of you lived a certain life. And because your royalty is like, it's just, that typical royal thing. It's like, you never really meet other people. She was probably a sheltered child. And it's just kind of like, that's probably why she's the way she is, very, like, kind of very snappy and mean and will say whatever's on her mind. Just because she's probably not used to really knowing how to conversate with people on a normal level. Because like when it came to the whole situation of Anna and Elizabeth having two different opinions about how the whole beast situation is going to play out. Like, Anna's got her version and then Elizabeth's got hers. Like, it's kind of like, oh, who's got it wrong? And she's like, and then basically the princess like, yeah, one of you is right and the other one's a complete idiot. So which one is it? It's like, oh, look at you, the great and powerful Wizard of Oz. Look at you. Ooh, looks like you've got a lot of like councilman people to kind of speak in your ear essentially about this whole beast situation. It does make you wonder who will be right. I think Anna will be right. But, I mean, I don't know. It makes you wonder whether it could come with something because of that whole Elizabeth situation. Was she trying? I don't know. We'll see. But it's kind of sad. Like, the reason why she's acting like that cold-hearted is probably because she's lonely. But then she's like, okay, basically try to make things work. She even told her, like, Jack even asked her, like, what's up with your mask? And she's like, oh, you want to know why I'm wearing a mask all the time? It's like, I'll tell you once we become friends. Some dudes kind of attack them and beat up Jack a little bit until like they start hitting the wrong parts of his body and he starts whooping ass because it's like the benefits of having a body like that being, like I said, they obviously haven't called him that, but that's what I allude to him as because of my limited knowledge of Oz. I refer to him as the Tin Man. Makes you wonder if there are going to be other people like him or is he the only one of his kind. But nevertheless, he kicked their asses. I mean, because there are still parts of his body that are still human, so like, I mean, flesh and blood. Like his other hand, when he punched the dude, he was like, ow, because it was his flesh and blood hand rather than like his mechanical body part. And then the princess was like, oh my god. He's like, why are you looking at me like that? It's like, and then then they kissed and everything. He's like, okay, that's not what friends do. And then the princess was like, okay, then let's be more than friends. I'm like, wow, you went from servant to like boyfriend just like that. It's like, wow, that's pretty impressive. I mean, it makes you wonder. I mean, in a sense, it's kind of like, well, part of my brain is like, I'm sure things are going to get complicated when he meets up with Tip again. I mean, granted, it's like, I mean, he kissed Tip and everything. I doubt he wants to tell the princess that. It's like, oh, like, probably a situation where it'd probably be better to be like, yeah, you're the first girl I ever kissed. Yeah, you're the first girl. No other girl before you. No shape or form. No one before you. Because the whole situation is kind of interesting, like, because the reason why Tip ended up helping Dorothy anyway was because it was like, well, she's like, I basically let someone I care about die. She's like, I'm not about to let someone else die, because of me, essentially, alluded to Jack, but it's like, she doesn't, it's so interesting, like, everything's coming together here in the Emerald City, and they just haven't crossed paths yet. Jack and Tip happen, but like I said, it's going to be interesting when that does happen because it's got to happen next episode. I was halfway expecting it this episode, but it appears like that's not the case. So overall, a very interesting episode. Like I said, a lot of conjecture, kind of my random thoughts about certain things, but overall, a very good episode. I'm very interested to see how everything plays out moving forward. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.